Well, happy Friday to you. It's a beautiful autumn Friday here in Salt Lake City. Today, we've got a new Friday talk. We're calling it the Geospatial-Next Friday talk. In the last, I think earlier in the week, I spoke about sort of what really is essentially a rebrand. I was originally for a couple of years talking around the 2.0 notion, Geospatial 2.0, but numbering systems are weak. We hear 3 and 4 and 5, and Next is a much better way for us to describe the future path of geospatial. So in this Friday talk, let's just talk about what is Geospatial Next. So again, I often start with where we are today. I think that if we look at the traditional GIS industry, again, I'm repeating myself, but just to set the context of what we're going to be talking about, we've really been historically talking about, and continue today to talk about, 2D static maps and analysis. And it's very much centered on map users, the whole GIS world. We've also got business intelligence as well, and that's really around a business data visualization. Two-dimensional maps are a part of that universe. Again, that's targeted at business users, not the users that the GIS community currently reach. Essentially, actually a target of those that are working in the GIS industry are those users. And then I wanted just to include data companies here as well. There's others we could include in this list, but the Googles, the Snaps, the Facebooks of this world, they're very important in the sort of 2D mapping and to some degree 3D mapping world. But I think where they're pouring money into inside of their organizations is this sort of future world, which is sort of virtual reality, the metaverse as they're calling it, still kind of consumer focused, but amazing things are coming out of those data companies. So we won't be talking about those data companies in this conversation. So let's talk about this geospatial revolution, just to repeat what really lies at the heart of this. I'm reading articles at the moment about this being the heart of the fourth industrial revolution or fourth IR, but the core pieces of this revolution are this whole space economy. We've now got the ability to send up microsatellites and put small sensors on them to collect imagery and SAR and INSAR radar and other types of data from satellites. So there's a whole new space economy that's appeared. We've got LiDAR, which is the 3D world. We're beginning to look at things not just from the air, but from the terrestrial level, and even punching through the ground to below ground. I'll give a shout out to Miles Sutherland, a friend of mine who used to work at Esri. He's a very smart guy, got a company called Geocam. Him and others are doing really interesting work with imagery. So he's built a camera that can actually take panoramic images, but more than that, he can actually generate 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional location data from that. So some pretty interesting work there. Other pieces of the pie, of course, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning is all part of this revolution. IoT in all of its colors is a part of this. 5G is a part of this. We could go on. So we're in a real change technologically, and its impact is huge to geospatial. But we're really talking here about a startup Wild West. I've spent probably a lot of the time in the 2.0 world highlighting those that are doing new and interesting things with geospatial. A lot of those are startups, and it's kind of a crazy world. I liken it to, and I'll do another talk on this in the future, on the internet. I remember when the internet emerged and these crazy money pouring in, crazy ideas, and some really solid ideas as well. We're kind of in that place at the minute when it comes to the geospatial universe. So the challenge in the nebulous, there's a lot of things that are spoken about. Again, money being poured into this, meetings, experts appearing around some of these huge issues. Climate change is a massive one. We've got a spatial finance initiative in the UK, and spatial finance in itself is becoming a very big topic of conversation. We've got this whole idea of smart cities, the conversations around digital twin. I sort of put these as big, difficult, to some degree nebulous if you're talking about smart cities and what is digital twin. So we've got these big topics which are coming up, which are around geospatial, but they're enormous and to some degree ill-defined. Not to say they're not important, but that seems to be a lot of the focus that we hear and read about. So what are we really talking about when it comes to Geospatial Next? I actually think that the revolution that we're experiencing, if you take it at its core, is a richer set of geospatial data and new analytical tools. You know, we've got new ways to collect data through these sensors. We've got, and that's not just static data, that's dynamic data, near real time and real time. It's three-dimensional data, etc. And it's new analytical tools, and obviously machine learning and artificial intelligence are two of those, or are core tools in that universe. So at its heart, that's really what we're talking about. So how can these most effectively be applied? I think as I've evolved my thinking in this world, my center of focus has really been about the pure geospatial world, the data and the analytics. But my sense is that we really actually need to be enabling the business community with geospatial. So GeoNabling business activity, and again, more on this in the future, is what I see as the most effective application of geospatial. And I sense that that's what we're talking about when we talk about Geospatial.Next. So what is GeoNabling? In a simple terms, it's embedding and leveraging the power of location and geography in business workflows. That doesn't mean business intelligence tools per se. It means business workflows, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So what do we do with what do we do? That doesn't make any sense. What do we do with that? There should be a with in there. This is a bit of a complicated diagram, so we'll walk through that. I think that the geospatial data is foundational to what we're talking about here. So certainly 2D maps aren't going away. We've now added 3 dimensions and 4 dimensions to this. So we've got this foundational data source which has a location fundamentally and has attributes, you know, a person moving, a building, you know, a power station, etc. We know where they are, and we know at a base level what the attributes of those things are. But in themselves, they can be useful. But if we link them, this is where GeoNabling comes in, to business systems. And I've just given 3 examples there, to SAP, to Salesforce, for IBM. We start to take location-based data and link it up to non-location-based systems and data. That's incredibly powerful. That's incredibly powerful for many reasons. If we then add analytics to that, so again, we have this foundational data that it's linked together, and we actually provide analytics there. The outcomes from that are what many people call information products, but I like to think of that as business outcomes. So that's a critical flow that we've got, and I sense again that that's really at the heart of what we're talking about when we talk about Geospatial-Next, -Next. I've taken the dot away, I've added -Next, it makes a bit more sense. So again, everything's evolving. So what Geospatial-Next, -Next is not. It's not about academic conversations. I read too many papers and hear too many conversations, webinars, etc. around academics. And, you know, academics is great. It's all very theoretical. I also see a ton of focus on the impossibly challenging and nebulous. And when I say impossibly, I believe that areas like global warming are huge areas that geospatial needs to be applied to, but it's a massive problem, and it's going to take chipping away at that to get at it. It's something that's an out there thing that I think academics and people are working on. I worry that we focus a lot on smart cities and areas like that, which really have they're very nebulous. What is a smart city? You know, define it for me. It's very hard to understand. But we have these conferences which are focused around that. We have big conversations around smart cities, but again, it's sort of an academic, nebulous conversation. So Geospatial-Next is not about those things, at least immediately. I think down the road, we are talking about all these things, but it's the incremental pieces to get there that I think Next is focused on. It's also not focused on empty strategies and what one day will be possible. I read these strategy documents, which are all very good, but they're all very sort of, you know, things that you put on a shelf. There's no action attached to them. They're very filled with ideas and thoughts and what should be, but not really filled with what we should be doing and action points. And that's where really I'm most interested. What will one day be possible? I mean, again, I think they're very valid conversations. Why is, you know, Earth observation data, why is satellite imagery data so expensive? How do we get to a place where it's less expensive, blah, blah, blah. It's interesting, but it's not about today, it's about tomorrow. So what is Geospatial-Next? What is it? I think the focus point of it is what's possible today. What can we do today? It's all well and good talking about these big topics. It's all well and good talking about these fantastic new technologies. But in the startup world, a lot of those guys are going to go out of business because they don't have customers. And again, that's like the early days of the internet. Loads of great ideas come out there, but can they gain traction through getting customers? A lot of those guys won't get that, but they'll advance the conversation, they'll advance the technology. So what is possible today? And remember, a lot of our customers, the sort of the world that is geospatial and the world that we're trying to move geospatial into, they're still way behind the curve. I mean, I was listening to a utility conversation the other day about how utilities need to move from paper to go digital. I mean, we've got a lot of work to do to move people forward. So I think Geospatial-Next is really around what is possible today. It's about taking action, not writing strategic documents that get revised each year pointlessly. It has to be about action, what we can do. So it's very much a proactive conversation. I use this term geospatial crossing the chasm. I love that book, Crossing the Chasm. We'll be talking a lot more about that in future, but Crossing the Chasm talks about beachheads. And to me, if you talk about the GIS industry, the beachhead of the GIS industry, the GIS departments. Where the GIS industry has never got to is the commercial world. So crossing the chasm is widening the conversation to allow geospatial to actually get to reach those beachheads, to actually become more widely adopted. So really we're talking about enterprise geospatial. I think at the heart of what we've been talking about here is enterprise geospatial. How do we bring geospatial into the enterprise? That's organizational use. That's a foundational piece to that pie. So that's my Friday talk. I'm really interested in what you've got to say about this stuff. So there's my email address. That's me. This is really a rebranding of what I've done. Those that will get in the newsletter, apologies, it hasn't been sent out for a while. I've been really thinking about what we do next. I've spent a lot of time talking about the brave new world that's geospatial and the startups, etc., etc. It's been a good theoretical conversation, but in a much more practical way, what can we do about actually moving the needle forward? And I believe that GeoNabling is important here. I believe that aggregation of location-based data is really important, multidimensional data. So we'll continue this conversation. I'll share with you some of the social media things that I'll be doing, and I really want to build community around this. This is the biggest thing. It's building community and taking action. So thanks for watching. Lovely weekend to you, and we'll talk again next week.